The idea of being sent forth. I go to Mass every Sunday and I'm a part of that experience, and I'm always captivated by the fact that we don't just stop in church. You know, we go to Mass and it ends almost with us being kicked out, like, go get them.
It's like every Mass I say, and the priest says, the Mass is ended, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. The Mass is ended, go out and pray the gospel with your lives. The Mass is ended, you know, and so you got to go out there. You got to go out there in the world and do that. But we don't know how. We're like, okay, yeah, okay, thanks, Father. Are there donuts?
I remember this past Lent, being in a parish in Nebraska, and in the parking lot of the church, as you left the church, there was a big sign and it said, "You are now entering the mission territory." And I stood there for a while. I was like, wait, is it facing the right way? Should it be facing? And I think that's the core message of being sent forth, is that you're being sent out to be missionary. You're being sent out to be a missionary, I would argue, a missionary of joy. A missionary that takes this gospel message that we've received, this freedom, this healing, all the beauty that we have, been given by the reception of the Eucharist, the sacrament of all the sacraments we've received in moments in each time of our journey, wherever we are on the journey even. And then the church says, now go out into a world that's frustrated, anxious, insecure, lonely, bitter, bored, stressed out, and somehow become a light to that darkness. For me, that's really the way I try to live.
I really think that's the key to evangelization today too. People ask, well, how do we lead people to Jesus? And I think we start with ourselves. We start with, just a willingness to talk about our relationship with the Lord, even if it feels kind of clumsy, and just where do I see the Lord at work in my life? And I think once we open that door, God is going to do what He needs to do for that person. Evangelization is one hungry person telling another hungry person where there's bread.
Amen.
You both need it. You're just helping each other find it.
I think there's a temptation when we have an experience of the Lord, to want to stay right there and to want to stay in the church and never leave, because it's controlled, the temperature's controlled, the experience is disciplined, we're fairly safe. And I believe the Lord calls us potentially even to be a tad bit uncomfortable as missionaries. I remember reading years ago that missionaries would enter the territory that they were going to serve, and they would spend 6 months listening, not saying anything, but paying attention. And I often wonder if we were to become those kinds of missionaries. Like, imagine just leaving Mass and spending a period of time in whatever your mission field is, if it's the business world, if it's your home, if it's your school, and not making a lot of noise and not bringing all this anger and bitterness and divisiveness, but if we became the leaders of those kind of things. And for me, that's what's been important. When I wasn't in the church, I was stunned by how the Christians acted just like everybody else. So it wasn't attractive. I didn't want to be a part of it. The people that were having fun were not necessarily there. And so my whole ministry has been built on this idea. It's John chapter 10, verse 10, and it says that Jesus tells us, I came so that you may have life. And not just any life, but an abundant life. And one of the things that I've noticed is that you don't have to say a lot about Jesus when you know Jesus.
I think your mission stems from, or is an outpouring of, your personal relationship with the Lord. Once we enter into a relationship with Him, we pray, our hearts filled up through prayer, through the sacraments, and His outpouring of life is then present in our lives. Then we're able to give that life to others. And it becomes very natural, like breathing in and breathing out. The more you experience His love, the more you want to share that with other people. The more you share that with other people, the more you want to experience His love. And so it becomes a very natural thing, but it all begins in our relationship with Him because everything we do in mission is because of his outpouring of love to us.
I think as missionaries, almost daily, we have to figure out where we are in the journey of life, whether it's younger, middle age, or maybe even later in life. And then what voices are we listening to? Like, what's the voice pushing us? And if it's not the voice of God, we have to go into our hearts. And that's where prayer comes in. I mean, I think it's the foundation. It's the fuel that fuels missions in the church and missions in our lives, is this daily time with the Lord, where I really do kind of check in, like, here's where Joe is today, and here's the voices he's listening to. Here's the things that are pushing him, and the simplicity of just having a relationship with Jesus and just falling in love with Jesus. And if that's really enough, if I never gave another talk in a church, would I still love Jesus? If I never went to another mission or another men's group, if I were completely alone, would Jesus be enough? Jesus asks, do you want to be well? And for me, being sent out, I feel like that you have the sacrament of reconciliation, which is a sacrament of healing, the reception of the Eucharist, which I think fuels us on our journey. Those two things have driven me as I've lived as a missionary, probably more than anything. And those two things have not only given me the opportunity to be well, but have given me the strength to enter a broken world and try to bring healing to it. And it doesn't mean some grandiose act. It could be just making a phone call, or stopping by, or reaching out to somebody. I feel those things and those questions are the questions that missionary people entering the territory ask themselves and live into daily. And I think there's an urgency right now. There's a sense of urgency, and Father Capon has given us, the church, this opportunity to potentially be hope to a hopeless world, to be light to a very dark world in some senses. But not to live in that darkness or even to wallow in it, but to be so filled with joy that people want to be around us and want to enter into the story with us. I read the life of Jesus and I just see this powerful, he's God, figure just enter people's stories, man, over and over again. Eating with the wrong people, hanging out with the wrong crowd, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be stuck in a church the rest of my life. I know that I'm supposed to go there. I know I'm supposed to receive the Lord. I know that I receive a tremendous amount of grace by being there, but I also want to enter the mission territory. And the Lord has called all of us into that fight. He's not giving anybody a pass on that one.
And you are sent out. That is the new evangelization. And is it bestowed and entrusted to you today in your own homes and your own family and the prison of war camp and wherever you might happen to work. That is your job, and that is your commissioning, that you leave these doors charged up and tired as all get out from the walk and pilgrimage, but charged up and ready to go spread that gospel. And even Father Capon, if he was standing here today, he would tell you the same thing. Don't stand here looking up at the sky. Don't stand here milling around. Go and spread the good news.
As we talk about being sent forth, I think it's important for us to take a second and first look at where we've been. And we started with invitation, the idea that God not only invites you, but He sees you where you are, and He invites you from that place onto this incredible pilgrimage of life. Secondly, we look at simplicity, and we think a little bit about the fact that what are the things that we are so attached to that are keeping us from living into this glory that God calls us to? How many people are we accompanying on the journey? And are we putting ourselves in a position where we might be accompanied by someone on the journey? We think about the receiving the things that God has for us. And my prayer this entire series has been that when you received the Eucharist, you were super grateful for the fact that we worship a God who lived for us, who died for us, and who saves us. We look at fortitude and the call to have the boldness to step into the world and to live our Christian faith, to stand strong and to be a lighthouse, a beacon of light, a symbol of hope to a world that sometimes feels very hopeless. We ended with openness to God. And what does it mean to live from a place where God can move in our day-to-day life, where His will can be done, and not only be done, but we invite His will into our decision-making, into our families, into our businesses. And so as we talk about being sent forth, we begin to say to ourselves, I'm ready now to be sent. I'm ready, after having experienced this series, to go out into the world and to share this hope and this love and this faith with a world that so deeply desires those things. The last challenge is simple. We're asking you to look out into your world, a family member, a friend, a coworker, and share this series and invite them to be on pilgrimage for you and use what you've learned to lead others closer to Christ.